The year is 358 BCE, and the 11th King of Kings has taken the Persian Achaemenid throne. He is Artaxerxes III, born by the name Ochus to his father, Artaxerxes II. He had been a satrap as well as an army commander during his father's reign, and he was already older than most of the previous kings, being in his late 60s. As with many of his predecessors, his first act upon taking the throne was ensuring his siblings would not vie for what was now his. He had 80 of them executed to remove the potential of this threat. It is speculated via a few sources that he kept his father's death quiet for almost 10 months to build the infrastructure required for this massive purge. Unbeknownst to Artaxerxes III, a shadow was rising in the north of the Greek city-states. Philip II of Macedon had taken the Macedonian throne in the year prior to Artaxerxes' ascension. The Macedonian shadow would continue to rise and soon envelop all around it. Nothing and no one would be safe from its influence, even if for now it was but a distant threat. It has been surmised that the first of the mighty kings of kings would have known this shadow for what it was, would have seen it rising even now, and would have been able to shine a bright light upon it to diminish its potential even before its rise. However, the version of the Achaemenid Empire that existed in 358 BCE was not the vision Cyrus had breathed life into. In many ways, while it mirrored it in size, it was not filled with the cohesion it once had, and it suffered from weak, petty, jealous, and bitter satraps, who spent as much time fighting amongst themselves as they did with the King of Kings at its center. Oblivious to all but what impacted them directly, a threat such as this was given space, and more importantly, time to gain momentum. As they bickered, the shadow in Macedon would grow only larger. Artaxerxes knew that for his central authority to have substance and meaning, he would need to silence the rebellious satraps and put an end to their revolts. First, he entered the territory of the Caduci. The future, last true king of kings, Codomanus, known to us as Darius III, distinguished himself as a leader during this campaign. Artaxerxes came to terms with the leadership of the Caduci to lay down their arms. He then turned his attention back to the other satraps and forced them to dismiss any mercenary soldiers in their employ. The King's Peace of 387 BCE, also referred to as the Peace of Antalcidas, was guaranteed by his father, Artaxerxes II. It ended the Corinthian War and ensured high levels of autonomy for many of the Greek city-states. In 357, the Social War, or War of the Allies, was fought until 355. Athens and their Second Athenian League had fought against the allied city-states of Chios, Rhodes, Kos, and Byzantium. Artaxerxes forced the Athenians to accept a peace accord, removing their troops from Anatolia and leaving rebellious Greek city-states to determine their own future. Next, Artaxerxes turned his attention towards Egypt, which had been separated from the empire now for 60 years. Not quite long enough for him to have forgotten, however, given he was a young man in his early 20s when they left. He had not forgotten or forgiven the Egyptians for this transgression. With Egyptian pharaoh Nectanebo II supporting rebellion in Asia Minor, he had the excuse he needed. He raised a massive army through a series of levies and marched into Egypt to engage Nectanebo. At first, Artaxerxes had some minor successes, but the Egyptians managed to hold out long enough to receive Greek mercenary support. The two Greek generals, Athenian Diophantus and Spartan Lamius, joined Nectanebo. They collided with the Persians, who suffered a massive defeat, forcing Artaxerxes to leave Egypt and stay his ambitions for Egypt, at least for now. The meddlesome Greeks, as they had throughout the Achaemenid history, proved a worthy, if annoying, foil to the Persians, and Artaxerxes, having now learned this lesson for himself firsthand, went back to the tried and true Achaemenid tactic of countering Greek soldiers and aggression with Greek soldiers and aggression of their own. After his defeat in Egypt, Phoenicia, Anatolia, and Cyprus all declared their independence. In 343, Artaxerxes countered by providing Idrius, the prince of Caria in Asia Minor, with the necessary resources to return Persian order to the upstart satrapies. Idrius utilized 8,000 Greek mercenaries, 40 triremes, and put at their head the Athenian war strategist Phocion. In addition, he placed Evagoras, the son of the Cypriot monarch, as co-leader beside Idrius. The army deployed on Cyprus and forced a surrender, but had little success elsewhere, causing Artaxerxes to personally lead a force into Babylon and then on into Syria, where he restored order. Sidon, which was the center for the unrest, was betrayed by their monarch. The Sidonians, in response, adopted the scorched earth tactic of burning their own city to the ground. This caused a domino effect of surrender, first in Phoenicia, then in Palestine, and order was restored. Seeing his opportunity, Artaxerxes quickly turned back to Egypt, where he besieged and took Pelusium and Bubastis, and the rest by the last few months of 343. Nectanebo II fled south to Nubia, where he was able to prop up and maintain an independent kingdom, but one that was cut off from the riches of the Nile Delta, making it mostly symbolic. Artaxerxes was hated by the Egyptians prior to taking Egypt, but he was now positively loathed. Egyptians despised him, identifying him as a bull's arse for his act of sacrificing the Apis bull. Artaxerxes did not view the Greeks with the same mutual loathing the Egyptians heaped on him, but instead sought consistently to attempt for peace over war. His first real encounter with Philip II of Macedon was a peace accord of mutual understanding and friendship, one which he seems to have observed even if the details are lost to us millennia later. What we do know is that Greek delegations who sought help from Artaxerxes against Macedon returned empty-handed. However, when Philip II attacked the strategic seaport location of Perinthus, his motivations seemed to have been made clearer to Artaxerxes, who immediately sent troops into Thrace. This is the point historians say Alexander would use as his main motivation to sack the Achaemenid Empire, and not the Persian conflict with Athens centuries earlier. For now, Artaxerxes had managed to restore the empire's territory to its gains under Darius, and with it, at least temporarily, strengthening central power. In his personal life, he married his niece among others, but given his age, much of his actions seemed almost too late. Had he been a younger man, his restlessness and ambition may have contributed to the Achaemenids with what would be needed to stave off the coming dark Macedonian storm. Alas, it would prove too little, too late, and much of what he had accomplished would be quickly undone after his death in his 80s. What the empire most needed, he could not provide in full, and only full would assist with what was to come. This ends part 7 of the Persia Rises series. The next part is going to be the finale, guys. I've really enjoyed this series. Thank you all for your support, your watch time, and your comments. It's been much, much appreciated. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. And if you've seen a few videos, you like what you see, you like what you hear, please consider subscribing. We'd love to have you on board. Until the next video and finale, there's also the Dutch Sailor finale coming as well. Until those, cheers.